see her rolling up, Uber black Cadillac, high heel boots, and a sexy body full of
So badly tonight worrying about that.
I know. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Now You Made It Awkward podcast. This is going to be episode 25. We're going to do things a little bit different because we have a kind of specific topic we're going to go over, about mental health and whatnot with celebrities and even non-celebrities alike. And of course, I am Shoky. You can follow me at all these Shoky and Shoky reviews related things in the description down below. And we do have Rob, aka Dormammu.
Hey, what's up, everybody?
Or Dad Mamu. And then
Mr. Mom,
Mr. Mom, also known as, hey guys, I gotta go. And then of course we have Rikki over here.
What's going on, everybody?
He's responsible for making videos for Nerd Rage Radio, and apparently he got caught up on that, so that was a good thing. As I listened to,
I had a whole thing about that.
So yeah, I heard Bobby talk about it on this week's Nerd Rage, or last week's, whichever, because I was listening to them both yesterday.
Which was a huge pain in the dick. I don't know what happened. It was like an update or something. The KindMaster kept failing. Like 2 uploads sat there unuploaded, and when I tried it, I couldn't even watch them on my phone where I work on them. Kept saying there was some kind of error, and I found out it's like an update they did where they give you more options for 1080 or 1080 PI and all that stuff. Well, they added in like high definition and high definition 4K, and then there's also another section where you can do your frames per second. Yeah. Well, I had mine all set. When it did the update, it automatically changed them to higher rated stuff than what my phone's going to make for a little promo video. So they both failed. So,
well, that would do it. Yeah, that's kind of what we were talking about with OBS. We were hoping none of the OBS settings would be fucked up after we did that.
It took forever, man. Kara can tell you. I was getting pissed, dude. I was like punching the table and stuff. I was getting mad as shit. And she finally just said, hey, what about your resolutions and stuff? And I went in there and looked, and I was like, what the fuck's this 4K stuff? And I started messing with it, and I finally found the right one, and it worked. And I was able to fire them off one for this week.
Good. Yeah, that is a pain in the dick. But I would also recommend, you have a new computer now, so maybe.
Yeah, but you can't use KindMaster on computers.
I know. I was gonna recommend the software I use, which is fairly simple, and it would allow you to create content on your computer.
That is true, but I pay for this, and I don't want to have to go through all that, get a new one, and learn it. Bullshit. I'm lazy.
It's probably fairly similar, except you can use your mouse. That's pretty much it. Probably the only difference. And also, Rikki is on the Realm Hatton Project on Friday nights on the Realm of Collectors channel. So go check that out. And I wanted to open up with reading an email because apparently totally missed it and missed and dismissed it by accident when we were going through Jay's emails, or came in after we did all that, and for whatever reason it got lumped in with things that had been read even though I hadn't read it. So I feel bad about that. So I'm going to go over it real quick, even though we were going to do not bad. So
sorry, Jay, we still love you. It wasn't on purpose.
Yeah, it wasn't on purpose. Sorry. All right. So he's reading episode 23 of our podcast, and then he has the Realm Hatton Project episode 5 stuff. I already sent that to Rikki, so won't be reading that on air. So our episode 23, he gave us an 8.1. Apparently he doesn't rate the extras or bonuses, just the numbered episodes. So there's that. He says, overall, a good episode. Thank you. Though apparently our most listened to and watched thing is the Anne Heche episode. I think it has several hundred views at this point, and gained us many subscribers. So yay for that. All right. So he answered a lot of questions we were talking about. So going back to when he's asking about historical models and stuff like that. He says, I was talking about German World War II models in the Plamax Naked Angels line, which is based around Japanese idols / porn stars. That's something we didn't take into consideration, was nudity. So, I mean, I think we still say the same thing, they don't need to be censored. And well, I mean, the packaging might need to be censored if it's going to be sold in stores, but that's when they can do like a black wrap or something. So no, we still agree on that anything like that should not be censored.
Because it's a slippery slope. If we say yes, we have to censor that, then it starts slipping down to everything has to start getting censored. And then something that we don't think should be censored is also going to be censored. That's how it works. You can't do partial censorshiping. You're either full on censoring everything or you're not. And you leave it up to the customer to choose not to.
He might be onto something though, because I'm sure there's a market somewhere for small plastic bars that look like pixelations that you could just put on those
They have them.
figures.
They have them.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
They have them. Actually, what would be really
Mhm.
funny is if they had water slides.
Yeah.
So
Yes,
you have
indeed.
you have water slides that go over the boobs that are that are pixelated. That would be hilarious.
Pasties.
No, I mean it
But that's what
literally
I'm saying.
covers the whole thing. It just covers the whole
But-
thing in a
Covers
pixelated
the whole
bar.
thing. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Mhm.
Yep, I think that'd be
But
hilarious.
it should still come down to the individual. I mean, if you're first of all, if you're the type of parent that's buying this stuff for your 9-year-old, then you have a whole you'll be part of the conversation we're going to be having here in a little bit.
Yeah.
But if it's for an adult, then it comes down to their personal choice of whether do I need the whole entire nip to be hanging out for me to be acceptable with this figurine or statue, or does it still look good in my display the way I want it to look with covering on stuff? Then that comes down to the individual.
Yeah, I would say within the person's owning of said thing, there should be no censorship. In the public display of which, especially in the case of nudity, I should say specifically, yes, there should be some censorship. Even Japan does that, But that's also.
But then again, it's their call. You just don't let a kid go into your, you don't let your little nephew come in and see your collection if you have that shit set up.
That's exactly
like that.
right.
Yeah. And because I mean, it even gets to the point where in anime, they actually, no pun intended, draw a fine line between actual boobs and just sort of silhouette boobs, where they basically eliminate the nipple, and somehow that counts. So I mean, it's there, that's that slight censorship. So either way, yeah. All right, moving on. It does the repro games based on what I know of copyright in the copyright law in the U.S. Sorry, there's a typo there. Anything that is no longer produced or updated by the copyright holder for 10 years is called abandonware, and is fair game to anyone, no pun intended. So actually, that's a good point. If it is if they don't hold the copyright or they're not doing anything with it, I mean, yeah, there's no they're not even rip off.
That happens all the time. That's why
it's fair
Disney's
use.
constantly. Yeah, that's why Disney's constantly fighting to change that law when their time's about to come up where it would go back into what do they call that? Yeah, public domain. They go and fight it to get it changed so it's longer. It's the same thing. You have to keep it active. It's why Hasbro does all the stupid name changes on figures. You might have Swindle on a jet on this one, and the next line Swindle will be on a Jeep because they did not keep the copyright for the jet Swindle. Or it might be the same exact jet, and it's Swindle in this line, and it's Bob from Ohio in the next one because they forgot to update the Swindle copyright. So I mean, it happens all the time.
Yeah, but that's also
what I'm talking about is they don't tell you.
Yeah, but that's also the name versus the code, software code. So I mean, abandonware makes sense. A lot of those
games, they have copyrights on them. Like all of them do. It's just like he's saying.
Well, that's what he said. If they've done nothing with it for 10 years, but that's probably actually that's a good point as to why modern games have so many patches and updates constantly to keep them,
every time they do that, it probably updates their copyright.
Exactly. So that's an interesting point there. Also, we learned something. We didn't know that.
And it's also, I think, one of the reasons why you get those re-releases and reissues, like they're doing with the Resident Evil ones right now. By re-releasing a 25-year-old game, they've just rebooted their freaking copyright on it again.
Yeah.
Also, it's still that fine gray line because copyright and ownership does not encapsulate infringement as said, and that's also actually been court cases too.
I think the other case is whether or not you're making money on it or just giving it away.
Yeah, there's a copyright violation and a copyright infringement. Those are two different things.
Yeah, which is what we encounter all the time on YouTube, or I do.
That's how you get away with KOs and third party. That's the difference between a KO and a third party.
Well, it just comes down to in copyright law, what is fair use of the likeness, image, or representation of said thing, so that's where a lot of these things come in. And he does mention that for the fair use thing. So right next, so he says, for example, Pokemon Red for the original Game Boy was discontinued somewhere between 1999 and 2002 and is fair game, but he's unsure about the Fire Red, so the kind of redo of it for the Game Boy Advance. But now they actually have another redo of that recently, right? But it's like an updated complete update version of the game, though. Was it for the Switch? Is that the Pokemon Legends, if I remember correctly?
Something like that, yeah.
But no, it's Arceus, so that doesn't do that one. But they have redone it. But I know they have another one coming out as Ruby and Sapphire or something like that. And I think it's meant to be another update, sort of going red and blue, but different.
It's their new slogan. It's not got to catch them all. It's got to release them all.
Yeah.
Re-release them all.
Yeah. Oh, and then here's what he said. Same game, but completely different software coding. So technically the original coding for the game is fair use.
Gotcha.
Because they didn't do anything with it. So, all right, let's see here. The episode rating, he puts EP, so I don't read that as episode. I read that as EP, like a music thing.
Extended play.
Yeah, exactly. So the EP rating is mostly because Dormammu didn't come back, so you guys couldn't really talk about anything. Okay, so Rob leaving and not coming back actually gave us a lower rating, even though it was an 8 something. So we could have had like a 9. We could have had a 9.
My apologies.
How dare you,
Dormammu? How dare me?
How dare you be a good father and help your wife with your children and take them out and do fun stuff? You piece of shit! You costed us a perfect rating.
We could have had a perfect rating if not for your kids.
I know what I'm getting you for Father's Day: a bag of shit.
I was gonna say a leash and a long pole. Anyway,
I'll be sure to remind my children in 2 years of this.
That out of all these emails, that's probably one of my favorite reasonings he's ever put on.
That is pretty funny, actually.
But I do appreciate the context, Jay. Sorry, very sorry.
So he has an explanation for the languages from that other email. It said the opening line of the email from episode 20 is in Yiddish, Chinese, German, Italian, and German. I guess he was saying in order.
I told you one of them sounded like Hebrew. Yeah. I fucking told you.
Very nice.
Yeah, we pieced it together. Okay, so in English it says peace be to you and hello asshole. Hold on, and then he says, hold on. What he says is hello asshole. I guess he's talking to me. Fucker talking to you and Sir Mike. So he didn't give Mike a bad thing. Though of course going way back then, Mike was still around.
Together. He sounds like a Canadian. I don't care where
he's not Canadian.
I know he's like.
I forgot where he said he's from, but yes,
it's Midwest somewhere.
All right, so
That's just Canada.
Okay, so I speak English. Shoki says some dickhead remark. I mean, why would I say anything about you speaking English?
I think he's saying that's why he did it in a foreign language, just so you wouldn't make a dickheaded remark.
No, this is what he says. So I speak English. Shoki says some dickhead remark. Nippon, aka Japanese, because of subbed anime. Italian, because of Assassin's Creed. So he speaks Italian because of Assassin's Creed. Interesting. Nice. I can get by.
I had a friend who completely learned Japanese and taught himself Japanese and reading and writing it strictly because of animes when we were kids.
Yeah. Sorry, I was having a hard time understanding a sentence until I got past this one section. It's like I can get by another 4 and understand another 9.
He said he can get by.
I know what he means. Yeah.
I got you.
I think there's a word missing there. Mostly by watching sub shows. Makes sense. All right, then the whole Realm Hatton Project stuff. So skipping down to the bottom, because he does address other things. So apparently he's not just writing in about this show and the Realm Hatton Project. He's writing in about other channels as well.
Jesus
so
Christ, dude.
this is one reason why I said is like, it's one thing if you want to talk to us and ask us questions about this show, but it's kind of, it's branching out potentially a little far.
I think we've actually nailed it down. Remember, like his very first one is he was asking us about firing up his own review channel and stuff. And he was talking about cars, this and tools that and figures and this, that. And I think he should make a review channels about review channels, because it seems like he's pretty much nailing that down.
Well, what's really funny is I do that actually on my other channel. We actually on Home Friday Lives, the last thing we do is we react to someone reacting to Home Free for the first time, which is the group that we normally focus on. So like we go to see someone else's reaction, but I'm not there to watch that music video. I'm there to judge their reaction and talk about it. So, that is part of what I do in the first place. So we call it reacception. So what he's actually saying here. So he says to
I'm going to call it, you have too much free time. That's what I'll call that shit. Rehabception.
No, people enjoy it though. Okay. So IDHTMS and other channels. So he says, need to react to more of the worst reactor ever. No, I'm not doing that. That guy was terrible. Best reaction I've ever seen from you next to Will's Lady Gaga cover request. Fuck you, Will, for making me do that. If you hadn't watched the channel, you wouldn't know. And he wants more vlogs and Nerf guns, please. I can only do so much. So that's regard to the Shoki channels. And he says, the best of Shoki reviews is coming in 2 months. Just remember, you have a podcast and 2 live streams to do every week as well. I don't know what I don't know if he's referring to double October. I don't know what he means by that.
I
It's
think
like,
that's what he's talking about. The one you mentioned the one time about how you do it every year.
Yeah. So I just did a live stream last night actually about the announcement for double October this year. And then he has
a friendly reminders. Don't forget that's coming, even though you're already doing all this other shit now.
Believe me, I'm aware. I have to work out the plan of my construction. So I actually put out a spreadsheet of all the models I'm building, the order I'm going to build them, the order I'm going to review them, and the status of said thing, so that I know where it's at. So that I'm
still trying to figure out which Gundam I want to pop my cherry with for my collection.
Don't know. There's so many. Literally,
no, I know
like
which
so
I know
many.
which one I want. It's the one from Iron Blooded Orphans, but I'm saying which, like, they're all that 152nd, 172nd, 1/100th, one this, one that. Paint it, don't paint it. No, snap together, glue together, like all this crazy shit. Dude.
Well, the fact that they're re-releasing all the IBO kits in HG right now would be a perfect time to get in on that. So, and they're available at Target. So you could probably go to Target and get them. I know you have your one Target.
I need you to send me a link because you'll know more of what I'm looking for than what I.
Or just order from USA Gundam Store. That's right there in Florida. You get it in one day. So
cool.
Let's see. And he says something in Japanese, which thank God. Well, actually, he didn't translate. He translated it, but not to English. He just put it there in English letters. So
transliteration. Yeah.
Yeah. So podcast yasto no sugi no episodo made. Anata wa ima sore o gikochinaku shimashita. So I think part of that is
he said episode. Nailed it.
Yeah, he said that.
I speak Japanese, y'all.
No, I think because I have translated. Oh, you know what it is? I actually completely recognize it because that's the Japanese for Now You Made It Awkward podcast. Which I'm literally looking at right here on the screen because I did actually put it up here. So it's funny. Once I saw the actual kanji, I was like, oh, that's the Now You Made It Awkward podcast. So that's funny. I don't know. Yeah, podkyasuto. I don't know if that's actually how you say that.
There might be one of those words that there is no direct translation.
Yeah, well, the funny thing is there is a word, quote unquote, word for it. Yeah, so it literally says, until the next episode of the podcast, you've made it awkward now. So you got the now is somehow in the wrong spot there. But yeah, it's funny that I recognized that. I was like, hey, that says now. And then I looked, I was like, oh, that's You Made It Awkward podcast. Actually, let me see here, because I have it in. So this is how you would say it.
Is that the end of his email?
Yes, but hold on. Let me play the Japanese since I butchered it. So hold on.
Podcastの次のエピソードまであなたは今それをぎこちなくしました。
Gikochinaku. That's how that's said. Okay. There we go. So we'll just add that to the end of the podcast from now on. That's how we'll close it in Japanese.
Nope.
Just kidding. All right. But the funny thing is, because of the way I've made the logo, I did take that almost that exact translation, but where I broke it to make it fit the actual logo, completely fucked up the translation. Except for podcast. Podcast is actually pretty simple, straightforward. So it's actually funny that he sent that in there. So the reason why, if you look at the logo here on the screen, it looks different to what Jay potentially sent in, is because I had to alter that. And actually, I believe this is actually the wrong one now that I'm looking at it. I think it is. So ironically, I'm using the wrong one on the screen. That's the one that's actually broken. That's funny. All right, actually, I'm gonna fix it midstream. You guys will see this.
This is how we podcast, y'all.
Yeah. You guys, hold on. In real time, in the episode, you guys will see it change.
You can listen to him talk about what he sees on his computer.
Yeah. No, the thing is, look, boop, right there. It just changed. And so this is actually the correct.
Oh, so
one.
we're live. We're on that Premiere thing or whatever.
No. We're not on Premiere thing. So I'm saying, right now, I just changed it on the screen. So they would have seen it in real time in the recording. Me change the logo.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah. So this is actually the correct one if you split it up. So like if you have it as one long sentence, Now You Made It Awkward podcast, it will look a certain way. Or at least the Now You Made It Awkward is a very specific set of kanji if it's one long sentence. But I have it split into Now You Made It or Now You Made, and then the bottom says It Awkward, more or less. You know, the it is kind of iffy. So just funny that he brings that up. So either way, now that we're done with that, and we hope that you guys will write in to the NowYouMadeItAwkwardMail at gmail.com, or as we kind of expressed to Jay, realistically, you can leave comments on individual videos. if you don't feel like it. That will also help with our algorithm. You guys commenting on the YouTube videos or even on the podcasts, wherever they might be, Apple or whatever, will help us in the algorithm. So sending an email is great, but it doesn't build the algorithm. Having the interaction and engagement on the individual videos really does help boost it. So just so you know, you can do that.
Plus, sometimes we watch and we'll live comment. So
exactly. So I've done a few live premieres with it. And if we're all available, we can be in the chat. I premiered one the other day and forgot, and work was really busy. So like an hour in, I finally joined the chat, but nobody was there. Christine joined in eventually. So
it
now
came
that
out while I was at work, so I couldn't even get in there.
yeah, exactly, same thing. So with that, we're gonna roll into our main discussion today, and we're gonna start with Ezra Miller again. Technically, we're just gonna mention Ezra Miller and then move on because we talked about it.
He's still a mess.
Yeah, exactly. So, well, hopefully he's not being a mess anymore. Hopefully he will be fixing his messiness as it is. So, we've talked about Ezra Miller at fair length, realistically, throughout here, and I think we've done a whole discussion about relationships and mental illness problems before, like many episodes ago in Hollywood, talking about the Jada and Will Smith problems, and then other people like that, who just seem to have that problem. And it does seem that Hollywood actors and like just mainstream celebrities have had a history of mental illness kind of in general, but it seems like it's getting worse and worse, and it's becoming more and more in the public eye. So kind of want to talk about that, and then the effects thereof, and then how some people are dealing with it, and then even to a degree how smaller creators are also suffering, not just huge, massive celebrities who've been around forever. And, with Ezra basically coming out very recently and saying, look, I realize after all of these things I've been doing publicly, I need some fucking help. And saying they have complex mental health issues, which happy to hear it. Literally, not just saying, nah, it's everyone else's fault. No, wait. I think I actually have some real...
First step to solving your problem is admitting you have one, and he's loudly admitting that he has one.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Now, the main hope with this is that he does legitimately get help and isn't just using it as a PR fix, because he's obviously got some extremely negative PR lately. So hopefully he's truly getting help in whatever it is that actually needs to be dealt with, whether it's drugs, alcohol, actual true mental illness, whatever it might be, because there's a laundry list of things that are wrong with people in Hollywood. Not just...
But those things don't automatically, disconnect from each other, because drug and alcohol or mental health issues. Yeah. It could be he has mental health issues and the drug and alcohol is making it worse or exacerbating the situation.
Yeah. So it can be a combo therein, or it can be, because some people literally just quit drugs and quit alcohol and got clean, I'm straight. And some people have the mental health issues, whatever it might be, whether it's anxiety, bipolar, borderline personality problems, any things like that, and then they seek drugs and alcohol to treat themselves, and it just, like you said, exacerbates the problem. And then they're also living in the public eye, which throws in public scrutiny, along with, and that just leads to anxiety and God knows what else,
And if I can just say something really quick about this, and this is not for celebrities, but for anybody in general. One of the things we wanted to do was kind of look up beforehand, like what resources are available. And so two things that come to mind. First is the National Alliance on Mental Illness, which is an 800 hotline. So it's 1-800-950-6264 in the United States. The National Alliance basically can provide help and support, information on what to do in an emergency. The other thing was something that was recently instituted, which is just like we have 911 for emergencies, is 988, which is the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. If you or somebody that you know is distressed or needs help, 988 is a nationally instituted helpline that is in place, that was that started earlier this year, but it is basically a helpline and somebody to talk to 24/7, 365.
Yeah. And
before we get too far, Shoki, too, I want to say this now is anybody listening, none of us are professionals. None of us are psychologists or psychiatrists. We are talking specifically from our own point of view, looking at stuff from the outside. Some of us have our own personal issues.
Yeah.
Yep. Some of us have our own issues and stuff that we've worked with. So it does help change how we look at things and talk about things. And I'm going to speak strictly for myself. My way of dealing with stuff is humor. So if I do any dark jokes or off-color jokes, it's my way of handling a very deep conversation we're about to have. So don't take it personal and don't think that I don't think it's important. It's just how my brain handles that stuff, because I do it personally at my own expense too. So
yeah, that kind of goes for me too. And I will say that after this episode, I'm going to do kind of a personal monologue, after the three of us, go off in our own ways, because there's some stuff that I want to talk about specifically that, I just want to put out there in addendum to this. So I'm going to do that as well, because it came up in a conversation with Bobby yesterday because of something that was said on Nerd Rage, but I don't want to go too far into it here. I want to focus on what's going on here first, and then we can boil it down to our own personal things later, as we get down to it. So I will be doing that later on my own accord. So if you see another episode pop up, that's what's going to happen. So, but yes, you're correct, Rob, on the helplines and stuff like that. And there's also, I know a lot of people plug it, not a sponsor here by any means, but we've seen before, BetterHelp Online is therapy and stuff like that. So, you can deal with that. I would suggest looking that up if you don't, it's similar to these kind of hotlines and stuff like that, but it's licensed therapists and stuff like that. It does cost a little bit, but if you feel like you might need some therapy to work some stuff out, not just like an emergency kind of crisis thing, that could be a resource to you as well. All right. So, let's lead off here realistically. So obviously talking about Ezra Miller, big deal there, but there's a laundry list, like literally of celebrities who have had an enormous, there's an enormous list of celebrities who have definitely had mental illnesses in so many ways. Just for instance, just reading off here, we got Joe Jonas, we've got Camila Cabello, Kendall Jenner, almost said Kylie, but oddly enough, no. Let's see here, Lizzo, Grammy Award winning, I believe, or MTV Award winning. See,
Grammy. Yep. Mm-hmm.
I didn't know if she won the Grammy or not. Amy Schumer has definitely come out in the past, comedian actress Amy Schumer. And I will say, based on just this list, there's a lot of females, not to negate some of the stuff that males have gone through. See, like Machine Gun Kelly.
I think that falls under more men as a whole. Again, we're generalizing, but men as a whole don't talk about their issues as much. It's a fact that people understand.
Yeah.
That, like, even my wife will tell you, me personally, she sneezes too hard. I'm like, let's go to doctors. My foot's falling off, and I'm like, yeah, I'm good. Just throw a little Band-Aid on it. Yeah. Like, we're very much, we want to keep our business to ourselves. We don't share it with other fucking people.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes a massive emergency. Like, okay, so now my foot's not falling off. Now my whole leg's falling off. Okay, fine. I guess we'll go see a doctor.
We'll go talk about it now. Yep. So actually, just real quick, since I mentioned MGK, one thing he's talked about right here is how basically he puts on a public smile when really he's got a lot of negative shit running through his head, posing and smiling for pictures and stuff like that, and just always hiding the things that are really wrong, like you were just talking about, Will Poulter definitely had some issues. And what's really interesting about this list is it's during/post COVID, and a lot of people are talking about a lot of the stress and anxiety around, especially in Hollywood, around coronavirus and filming getting shut down. Obviously, the concept of getting sick would be a problem, but also in some ways, a lot of actors and directors have talked about this. What happens when your whole shoot gets shut down because somebody got it, and they have to shut down filming for 2 weeks, got to keep everybody separated. We got to do all this, that, and the other. And a lot of people did crack under that pressure. I mean, Tom Cruise, famously kind of got in trouble for yelling at some people for sitting too close together.
Having a mask on. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they were sitting too close together. I don't even think it was that they weren't masked. So they're sharing one computer. They're sharing one computer to look at what was just filmed. And he yelled at them and threatened to fire them if they're going to do that again for
Which
that
doesn't make
reason.
sense because his alien overlord should be keeping everybody safe.
This is also
COVID
true.
anyways.
That's actually very true. And of course,
It's kind of like he doesn't actually believe the stuff that they tell him.
That's true. That's true. One thing that seems to truly be in here that I'm seeing over and over again, I could probably control F this and see how many times it pops up in this one article, is just anxiety. Like there's almost like a general anxiety disorder that just exists across Hollywood. You know, it's just
when
like,
you live, like literally all of us, look, we're sitting here talking about these people's personal information. Like in reality, they have laws, the HIPAA laws in place so that the nurse who walks in to take care of you is not allowed to ask what's wrong with you that you'd already talked about a doctor to, unless you willingly give them that information, because there's laws in place saying they're not allowed to ask you. So these people we're sitting here, we're reading about their psychological issues. We're talking about what's wrong with them mentally and sometimes even emotionally and physically and stuff. They have zero capability of having personal information to themselves. We talked about Will Smith and Jada Smith before. They had the whole entire implosion of their marriage with the freaking cheating and the this, that, and we all watched it like it was just a Saturday morning cartoon. Like it's crazy. I would have anxiety if everybody was in my business all the time.
Right.
The breakdown.
And you've made you made this as a point before too, where in this case where it's like, you know, these people they are in the public spotlight. Sometimes they choose to do this because that's their form of, I guess, activism, or at least speaking in a way that they, you know, they're trying to use their popularity to make it
their
public.
platform. Yeah,
correct.
And that's a good way to put it too, because some of them, like you said, you know, or somebody we're going to talk about later, they also champion organizations that help people deal with this situation, not just say, hey, look, I went through this, and they make it all about them. They say, I went through this, here's how you can get help if you feel this way too. You know, so that's
when
another
they change
step
it from
that's good.
when they change it from I went through this to we are going through this, that's when they change how much I actually pay attention to what they're saying. Because
go ahead.
Yeah, because then they're not separating themselves. They're making it realize that we're all the same. Like, and at that point, when actors, you can tell when an actor is talking genuinely. To me, is when they make an inclusive statement, not a separating themselves out statement. I deal with bipolar is not the same as we deal with bipolar. You know what I mean?
Well, I would think that in that case, there's actually there's an accidental pun to what you just said. I don't deal with bipolar. We deal with bipolar. Yeah. So
9 out of the 10 voices in my head say I'm not crazy, so I'm good.
It's like, I don't have DID. We do.
But you're correct, and that's partially where I feel like, and like you said, Shoky, a lot of this is anxiety, and I've had somebody explain this to me before, where anxiety is this frame. It can sometimes be this frame where things just literally will not turn off. You're just functioning at full 100% plus all the time, and so this I think and Ricky, you mentioned this before, where these people, they get into, they're actors because they have this higher functioning out of this, but it again, the type of work that they're doing, whatever it might be, to act these roles, to do these things, can be highly stressful, because they are trying to give their best to a role that somebody else is asking them to portray.
Yeah, and we'll cover that a little bit more.
Perfect example would be Heath Ledger. Heath Ledger.
We'll talk about that just a little bit more in depth on the next chunk of this, because that is actually the whole article coming up. But before we lose this thought, realistically, I want to read this quote from Olivia Rodrigo, singer and actress, so to speak. So this is really interesting how she puts this. So, I'm taking fame, in brackets, one step at a time. The High School Musical, series. That's so weird. So they took the High School Musical movies and made them into a series and gave it an even more complicated title.
High School Musical, the musical.
Yeah, the series.
The series.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a funny thing. I was like, it can be really tough on your mental health, though. I'm grateful for the people who like me for me, and keep me separated from all the noise and tabloids of what people are saying about me on social media. That always has been a top priority. It's funny how recognition changes everything and also changes nothing in your life. The problems I was having a year ago are still the problems I'm having now. The things that brought me joy a year ago are still things bring me joy now. It's just another aspect of life that you need to learn how to deal with, but it doesn't change who you are as a person. And that's a very positive way to think about that, because that was kind of the whole point. We talked about it with Ezra and potentially some of these other people, where the fame and recognition has broken them in a way, because they try to, I don't know, maybe live up to the things that are said about them, or they're trying to fight so hard against the things said about them that they end up losing who they are or forgetting who they are in the process.
I think it might be something more like, let's just make the assumption. Let's use Ezra just because it's been the most recent and most everywhere where everybody's talked about it. And we're going to make assumptions. But if we assume that he had pre-existing mental conditions, he might have already had, they might have already had thoughts about themselves not being decent people. Like, they already like, man, we suck, we're garbage, we're trash. They already have these preconceived notions about themselves. And then they turn on the news, and the news is saying, oh my God, look at these pieces of trash, and look at how they're acting. So now their mistaken thoughts about themselves are now being justified by everybody else outside of them.
Yeah, the internal thoughts have become external.
Yeah, and it's like when people get down, and they're a friend of yours, the first thing you're going to do to them is, hey, Shoky, man, don't beat yourself up, dude. You're doing fine. It's this, and that. You say positive things to try to offset the dark thoughts that they're having. Well,
sometimes it can be dismissive. Yeah.
In Ezra's case, he already had the dark thoughts, and then you turn on the news, and here's the entire fucking world telling you that all those things you thought are true, and they're worse than what you actually thought of yourself. I can't imagine the amount that would just devastate somebody who has a pre-existing mental condition. I can't.
I think the other leg of that could also be if there is a pre-existing condition, whatever it might be, that you suffer from a delusion that you don't have that, and then the more people tell you you do, you end up resisting it and making things far worse. Like, no, I'm not like that, I'm perfectly fucking normal, stop excusing who I am for what you want me to be. But in fact, you have an actual problem, and like you said earlier, recognizing that you have the actual problem is the first step to hopefully
fixing it. It's the very first step. It's the very first step, because if you don't think there's an issue, you're never going to work to fix it.
Yeah, and whether it's alcoholism, drug use, or mental illness.
Let's talk real personal now. This is me talking personally about my life real quick on this subject. Is I had a cousin. She was very hard into drugs, like really, really hard into drugs. 2 kids. She went to jail. She went to jail first, and the kids got put into like a temporary housing, with a family until she got back out. Well, then she went to jail again. They went back to the same family. And it kept going back and forth like this until it escalated to prison and longer prison terms and yada, to the point where eventually the courts completely removed her maternal rights to the kids. Like, she was never allowed to get them back. They're adults now, but they were kids then. Every single time that she went, the judge told her, you have to do rehab. You have to go to these classes while you're in there. You have to clean yourself up. And every single time she swore she was going to change. And I'm using just a personal from my family, but it happens all the time. People go to court and you go to jail. The first thought is you're going to clean up because you're in jail. No, these are people that will literally do drugs that are snuck up somebody's ass into prison, because they're not quitting because they want to quit. They're not quitting because they think there's something wrong. They're quitting because they're being forced to. And they will always relapse. Every single time.
Yeah.
Addiction is an insanely hard thing, and I've had in my life known people, personal and friends, who have had to deal with it, and
addiction,
hard.
Addiction in and of itself is mental illness.
Yep.
Like, it is a mental illness. And whether that is represented by just, drugs, for instance, or alcoholism, where it's a substance abuse problem, or whether you have 10,000 toys in your house. Sometimes addiction is just addiction. It's just there's levels, as it goes.
Ooh, I dodged both those bullets.
Just because you don't have 10,000.
That's right.
Some people have a fans toys addiction. Some a lot of
Some people have
times,
an OnlyFans addiction. I mean, it's
well, that's also true. Some people, and that rolls into some of the social media aspects that we'll talk about later.
Yep.
Where people just straight up have the social media addiction, which also leads to a lot of extra anxiety and a lot of other things, where they either feel the pressure from the outside to either feed into it or be a part of it, or have it respond to them. And if they don't get that, then it turns into even more anxiety about why is it this? Why is it this? And there's, good God, there's so many reasons why there's so much mental illness in current society. And, I'm not saying there's any one cause. Some of it's just over medication. Some of it's a lack of medication. Some of it's the things we're exposed to, on the news, on the internet, in real life. Sometimes it's fear mongering, in the broader term, and everybody just suddenly, that's the thing. Like when I was talking about with COVID earlier, and the last 2 years in Hollywood, so much of that anxiety comes down to the actors, I don't want to be this person who gets this fucked up. And I've heard this from many different people on different interviews and podcasts. And then some people were like, look, we're going to fucking do this. Like, we can be scared or we can be safe. We can do this right without giving in to the fear and have a much more relaxing shoot. And if shit happens, shit happens. We don't need to beat people down to make sure this is safe. We can do this the right way in some cases, just the way you handle it. And that's one of the things we're talking about with actors and musicians and the like, artists. We'll just say artists in general. It's like
spotlight.
People in the spotlight. It's like, how have you dealt with the external stimuli that may be the cause of your anxiety or depression? Depression is the other major word in these articles. And like, there's I feel sad about stuff, and then there's depression, and like there's a marked difference between the two. Because like in my own experience with depression, it's like there's no real way to be happy without some help. If you're just sad about stuff, you generally will have a way out of things. If you have anxiety on top of depression, the whole world feels like it's crumbling, and the more shit goes wrong, the worse it gets for you, and every little step forward can maybe not even feel like a step forward most days. And so many things can cause the house of cards to crumble, that kind of thing. So that's a big thing.
It's definitely, it's a hole. It feels like a hole, and it feels like a hole where you're just kind of sinking and you don't know what to do. There just doesn't seem to be a way to get out of it. Like, you're just like, what is the point? What am I even doing?
Yeah.
And yes.
And so much of it in here that I'm reading, just going through this, like, I got on antidepressants and it definitely helped me and I got out of it. But just be known that there is a large case study about antidepressants where they don't make things better. They can in the short run. And sometimes it's the kick in the pants you need, realistically. And then you can steer your way out with other therapies and things like that. But there's a lot of people who just get stuck on antidepressants and their life just gets worse and worse. And there's clinical reasons for that. So
and there's two patterns to the thought process of treating that. And one is medication, which is what everybody thinks is going to cure everything. And that's not always the case. Sometimes that is, but that's only like a 50-50.
Yeah.
There is actual conversation, talking, having a discussion with somebody who's a licensed clinical therapist who can actually talk about the problem, or even just finding ways to identify what the problem is, because that's so often what happens. And I think that's what a lot of these actors and people in the spotlight find themselves. They don't have a moment to do that. They don't have that moment of, I have the ability to go talk to somebody about this, because they're like, if I go talk to somebody about this, then everybody will know my business.
It'll get out on TMZ.
Correct. Yes. It's very, I mean, you think it's, I mean, not to minimize it, but it's hard enough to find licensed therapists that are of quality
Yes.
Because there is a shortage, and this has been discussed before by several mediums, including John Oliver has discussed it, where quality therapy is hard, and it's hard to find because there's not enough licensed therapists, certainly within certain areas and certain geographies,
Yeah.
but also because it's these people in particular where they're in such a limelight. It's hard for them to find somebody that's going to be private, even though there
Well,
is
in
privacy.
theory,
In
there should
theory, that
always
should be
be.
a thing, right?
So,
But
well, I will say in that case, when we talked about BetterHelp, it's an online thing, so you don't have to have somebody near you. And one to your point about finding the right, there's finding the right therapist for you and your situation also matters because they're not all equal. Some people will be better at recognizing things within your own personality that they will be able to work with. Other people will have a straightforward methodology that you end up resisting, not because they're bad, but because it doesn't work for you. And a lot of people give up on therapy because it doesn't work for them because that therapist didn't work for them. So sometimes you got to shop around. And I think with
that's exactly right. Yes.
with having
Not every shoe is for every foot. Sometimes you gotta,
exactly.
yeah.
And even if it's the same size shoe, doesn't mean it fits your foot the same. So,
Yep.
so that is definitely an important thing. And there are such things as Hollywood therapists, people who've definitely
They're there for
specify.
the paycheck.
Well, no, that's not what I meant. I meant like they're there specifically to help actors deal with the stresses of acting,
Got you.
which
Like
leads
having
into,
no personal space and
well, yeah.
everybody being in your shit.
But I was trying to segue into why is it and how is it that acting can put so much stress on these people. And if Rob, if you would like to lead off with that conversation.
So one of the articles that we were discussing was in regards to in order for these actors, and Ricky brought this up, like Heath Ledger, where you are portraying a certain type of character, or you're trying to portray any character in a role where it's vastly different or even potentially triggering to your own personal situations, but you're still taking this on. These actors, there is definitely two approaches to acting. The first is basically just doing the role in which you're set, and the other is, of course, everybody's heard of method acting, but I don't think everybody quite identifies what that is, what that entails. Method acting, which is the type of acting that like actors like Joaquin Phoenix do, or
Heath
um,
Ledger.
Heath Ledger.
What's
The
his name? The one who was super famous for it, who
Right.
retired. What's his name? Played Lincoln.
Oh, Daniel
Yeah,
Day
Daniel
Daniel
Lewis.
Day Lewis
Day-Lewis.
is
Hmm.
Mhm.
probably the most
Yeah,
relevant, famous
very much so.
method actor,
Yes.
where he literally lives the part. He'll eat the
Mhm.
diet of the person he's acting to
Right.
really get there.
Yeah,
And
that is literally the definition of method acting. You are getting into
you
the entire
become the
spirit,
role.
and you
Yeah.
become the role. You become that person that you're attempting to emulate. And so that the trauma behind that, it does create a form of PTSD in a fashion where you're acting upon this person that could potentially have been that their story may be one of emotional mental distress, whatever the case might be, whether or
Well,
not it is
what
realistic or non-realistic,
for
and you're
instance,
taking that on.
yeah, for instance, getting into the mindset of a serial killer or someone
Right.
who commits suicide in their particular role, you know, to get into the mental space of somebody who would be able to do that could easily affect you if you are one of these fairly in-depth actors. And like you're talking about, essentially there's some who can just leave things at a shallow level but get through the role no problem and it doesn't get internalized. And then we have the truly method actors who they internalize it completely and transform themselves to become the role.
It
Eh,
is one of the reasons why some of these studio houses have started to move more towards having an actual psychologist on staff
mhm.
for these films, to make sure that these actors stay in the right mindset. But there's a lot of instances, and this is what this article was going through, talking about how sometimes these folks don't get advised, or they don't discuss it, and then it winds up turning their personal lives into something more
They forget to what do the articles say? Basically,
compress and
they forget to de-roll. De-roll
roll,
would be
right? Yeah.
so. I will bring up, for instance, Anthony Starr from The Boys. He's
Mhm.
encapsulating a little too much of Homelander in his personal life, and a lot of people are bringing that out. Like, it's
Yeah.
almost, and for instance, in this article, it is showing stage actors, for instance. So, say you're playing a role on TV or a movie where you spend a few days a week, or maybe just a couple months playing that role, and you're out, right? With a stage performance, you might be playing that character in that role for years, night after night. Especially if it's someone who has to do traumatic things, or they experience traumatic things within the role, that might just keep getting embedded in your psyche over time. And it's like, when do you turn it off, when you have to repeat it over and over and over,
Yeah. You work so hard to get into that role, to get that role to begin with, and then to be told, well, basically you've got to keep repeating this.
Mm-hmm.
At what point does the dissonance between the two?
Where's the line between you and the character?
Exactly.
And where does it? And I think that, Heath Ledger is probably the most well-known version of that, where he got so into playing the Joker, allegedly, that he locked himself away. He had this whole diary thing. He's really kind of living the part. And not like Jared Leto did when he played the Joker. That was just an asshole being an asshole. Now, Leto is a method actor, but that was a really fucked up version of the same situation. But also, Ledger was known to have other addiction problems and things like that potentially led to his ultimate demise. But it could have been, or is reported to have been, the role as the Joker, and getting so psychologically in tune with that character that it broke him finally.
Yeah, it triggered what was there, and
Yeah,
kind of took it to that next level, for
yeah.
sure.
If nothing else, it might have played into problems he already had, and then elevated them to the ultimate status of that. And
Yeah. And there are some that can break out of that, like I think Anthony Hopkins. You look
Mhm.
at somebody who's played so many characters. Silence of the Lambs, I think of, and certainly others where these are actors that have to play these intense roles.
what about Johnny Depp? He
Johnny Depp is another one, yeah, for
and he
sure.
he that accent he uses now is not his natural accent. It's
Yeah.
almost like some of his roles have seeped into his personal being, and it's just how he is now.
And it
It-
makes me think, and this will pull Ricky back to it, the Clayface
Mm-hmm.
conundrum, where you
Mm,
have an actor who is has played all these parts, and it becomes part of their DNA, their psyche. Um, they can play it to a T so well that it's almost a completely different person.
yeah, yeah. You don't know who
No,
you are.
and yeah, Moon Knight's a perfect example of a type of where Oscar Isaac played multiple characters in multiple different roles, and played them to a point where it's like, okay, now you're playing completely different individuals on the same show in the same run. It's sort of like, at what point do those characters become part of your own reflections, your own what your own verbiage, your own use of terms, etc.
Yeah. One thing I just was reading through here on this same article is something I didn't even consider, this emotional hangovers, because to be an actor, you do have to be able to access emotions, anger, sadness, all these different things, to be able to emote in your thing, at least if you're a good actor, or if you're like Brie Larson, where, who knows. Um, which, don't get me wrong, I really do like Brie Larson, but sometimes she has very wooden performances. But then again, that could be a directing choice, not an acting choice. Either way, where the idea is, you may or may not have exhausted your actual ability to emote, and you crash after the fact. Especially, like I said, in the case of stage performers who are doing it night after night after night, is like, especially if you got to portray different things as you go on, or extreme sadness, and you actually are kind of fucked up emotionally after the fact because you do have to probably access the proper brain chemistry to emote properly. So your brain is actually doing the thing, and therefore you come away from it with the same problems. And then
I had an actor friend, not like, massively known or whatever, but somebody who was in acting, and they said like to do anything is emotionally, it's draining.
yeah,
By the time you're done with the day, it is draining because you're putting your all into it.
yeah, and not even the physical side, just the
Right, just the
mental, the
emotional
mental
side
and
of it,
emotional
the
side of
mental.
it. So if you add that on top of, in some cases, you're worried about money, you're worried about COVID, for instance, whether or not you're going to be able to get another job, whether or not you have a dick ass director, or something has come out in the news about you for some reason. So added stress on top of the abilities to basically fake emotions to the point that they're real, and now your own mindset might be affected by that, and then you have external pressures that you can't turn off or escape, and then you end up cracking under that pressure, you know. So it makes sense that actors and artists, because I could see a lot of this applying to musicians as well, but I think musicians have a slightly different thing because they have a little bit of catharsis in performing, but their emotional highs almost become like a drug. So like the audience reaction will feed your emotions, you know. Like
And
it's,
and to be honest, lead singers definitely have a certain level of ego behind it because you
of
have to
course.
have. You have to. It's just part of it. It's not, that's not to disparage it. It's just that it's be up on stage to do that to, and again, this is where I'm talking from experience for a very good friend of mine where it's just partially ego. You get into that. You're, you're personifying yourself to the audience.
Yeah. In some ways, when it comes to that, not always in the literal sense, but in some art, in some uh, musician's case, it is an act, say like Kiss or Rammstein or Gwar or something like that, to where it's not just an ego thing, but you actually are playing a character. Or even Alice Cooper,
Oh,
for
Bowie did
instance.
it quite often.
Bowie.
Bowie was infamous for that.
I think Bowie potentially had a slight form of either DID or some type of minor identity disorder. Probably not to his deficit, but because he did play a lot of different versions of himself in a way. Which one of
Yeah.
this is me? I mean, I'm sure Freddie Mercury hiding his homosexuality and then everything like that. Quote unquote hiding. Um, uh, Also affecting his mental state.
Prince also made several statements when he was
Yeah,
still
talking
alive
about
about that.
talking about growing
Yeah,
up in his household with his parents and stuff.
exactly. And the
Yeah.
He
fact
dealt
that
with a lot of shit.
he did not want, he didn't, he always felt like his own personal identity was not what he wanted the world to see,
Yeah.
because that was the ugliest part of him.
And that's why he went with that sign thing after
Yeah.
the whole. That was how he thought of himself, was the sign, and then there was the whole who owned the rights to the name Prince and stuff. But
Yeah.
yeah.
And I mean,
Yeah.
there can be whole episodes dedicated to, Diddy or to Ye or to any artist that, especially in the music realm, that falls into play.
That has repeatedly altered their persona,
Mhm.
musical persona,
Correct.
I should say. Because generally speaking, they're kind of the same person, but they're adapting to wherever they are in life. But I would also say, in this case, look at somebody like Aaron Lewis from Stained. Look at the earlier works where he was going through so much shit and had so many issues, and it's all really raw and much heavier. Especially that first album was super heavy, and not exactly mainstream
Now he does
either.
country music.
And now, because he's in a completely different place of life for the last like 9 years, he's been doing country music, and he feels more him than he's ever felt, and he feels happier than he's ever felt, at least according to public statements, comparatively. Same thing with oh, what's his name from Blue October? The lead singer from Blue October. Very, very
Trent
similar.
Reznor was the same way with Nine Inch Nails.
Nine Inch
versus how he is
Nails.
now.
Yeah, Trent Reznor is a good example. I mean,
Yeah.
Kurt Cobain is the one
I was going to get to Kurt eventually.
But yeah,
Kurt was a study in and of a different self of, and I already know all the conspiracies. I know all the things, but if we go by just the things that were vocalized, never wanted to really be famous and catapulted to the height of fame as much as one can.
And he could not run those demons.
No. Yeah. And that's actually a good segue into my next thing I wanted to bring up here with a semi-famous, if you're at least been on YouTube long enough, YouTube creator named Gabby Hanna. So I think she was on Vine at some point, probably before it died, obviously, and then became a fairly substantial YouTube creator. Like, had been around for a long time. Very big channel, known for doing skits, music, all kinds of stuff. And in the last couple years, jumped on TikTok, basically following the trends, following the fame. And I forget, this article's from the 25th. And
is that the one where the cops came out and all that
yes.
stuff?
So Gabby had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder at some point. And if you watch any of her first run of music videos from a few years ago, some of the songs are actually really good. And a lot of them deal with a lot of dark introspective stuff. And seeing her, and a lot of things we talked about here, talking about how she sees herself versus how other people see her. And, maybe trying to put on a face for the crowd. And very recently, she did a run of 100+ TikTok videos in one weekend, which is insane on its face. But a lot of them were really disturbing to the point that her fans actually had to call in a mental health check or wellness check on her. She does live in LA. Let's see, some of them, where is it here? They were talking about the different things. Part of this article said what her videos were, but I can't see. Where is it? But there was a lot of ones where she was talking about religious stuff. She declared herself Jesus. I don't know if there was suicide stuff in there, but one video where she just flat out let a stranger into her home. Like a homeless stranger person, just let him in to go to the bathroom or something, take a bath. I don't know. And like, some of these things could be an act. Some of these things could absolutely be a mental breakdown because she stopped taking her meds. I think Rikki even mentioned this at some point. When you are bipolar, you really got to kind of, you have to regulate yourself, or you have to follow your things, or you will have an absolute snap. That is a big problem. And so what happened was they did send the LAPD to her home. There's some stuff in here about her being handcuffed. I don't see why they would handcuff her to check on her. That seems extreme, even for the LAPD. But the idea that they sent in, she said, 5 officers busted into my house through the back door because I exercised my free speech and religion. I think that might be an exaggeration of what happened, but once again, we're potentially having a major episode. And they sent 2 psych eval people along with it. So, this goes into that category of, something is actually wrong with you, so you might need external help recognizing when something is going wrong. Especially if you're going off the deep end publicly, kind of like we talked with Ezra. And like I said, Gabby's been around for years. I think she was on YouTube almost since the beginning, like 2006, 2007. And then somewhere, I believe she was on Vine at some point. And
which again, props to her followers. And this is where, again, if even if you're not the one that's troubled, if you see somebody on, if you see something, say something, even if you're not sure if it's, going to help or not.
Yeah, exactly. And like you said, to have people say, hey, look, something seems off. So enough people recognize that there was a big enough change in such a short amount of time in her content, not to mention the alarming amount of videos, You know, you got to think about how long it would take to the amount of work to make 100 TikTok videos in one weekend, you know, just getting after it. Right. So clearly something was going on. I do hope that she truly got help. Now, once again, most people who have a problem, especially when it comes to like bipolar and stuff like that, when they're on a break, they don't recognize they're going to have a problem. They'll even insist, "No, I'm perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with me." Like I said, external sources to tell you something's not right. So in this case, people were sent there to make sure she wasn't going to hurt herself or anyone else. Unfortunately, you know. But to have people care that much, like you said, is important, because there's probably a lot of people who would have put up a video saying a lot of these things, and then they might have delayed the video release, and then they could have done some harm to themselves after the fact, you know. And there's some cases from a few years ago of, like, say, there was one creator, I forgot what her name was, but they were worried that she was going anorexic, or that like she was being abused by her boyfriend or her family or something like that, and she just kept putting out really strange videos where she was like acting like a little girl, or just dancing weirdly to like no music and no commentary, no nothing, and they should just upload it. This was from a few years ago. I cannot remember her name, but it was a big deal, and she denied having any issues, you know. And I think upon investigation, I think part of it was like she just was having some type of episode and not recognizing it. And it wasn't like anything ridiculous, but people got worried, you know, especially when you live on YouTube, essentially, you know. You're going to have millions of people. Like Gabby, for instance, has 7.5 million TikTok subscribers, which is insane in its own right. But, you know, if you live in front of the spotlight, even more than normal actors and actresses, and I think this is part of what this new generation of creators, at least in the last 10 to 15 years, when it comes to the internet, has really had a big effect on younger people, I should say, like our age, because people who started creating on YouTube are roughly our age now, you know, late 30s, early 40s, and have lived on the internet since at least their 20s, right? And have, in most cases, from the earlier times, catapulted so quickly to the forefront of modern fame as it is, especially to young people, that
culturally it's a huge jump, and
exactly,
yeah.
But then,
it's one of those things where these things, it's not like these things didn't exist before. It's just that the internet has made it so forefront.
yes. So I mean, these are people who their fame is entirely because of the internet. They didn't do movies. They didn't do TV. They exist because at some point they were making 3-minute videos on YouTube 19 times a week, because that was a new thing, or whatever, you know, GitHub or something like that existed before, or
Societally
4chan.
popular is the term.
There you go. Societally popular. And now that internet trends are a thing we now live in, for older creators who had a set way and a set personality, as we kind of put into it, they're not necessarily actors. Some of them are. Some of them had just played a part, right? You know, other ones have just put themselves out there, and then they're trying their best to stay relevant. When you're an actor in Hollywood, you know, whether you're on TV or something like that, basically you're set by your TV schedule, you're set by whatever movies you book. But you're not worried about keeping yourself out there to stay relevant, because that's not where your paycheck comes from.
Correct. Yeah, acting is a job. Let's just define that too. You know, as a whole, when we're discussing about these problems, it's because this is a job for these people. And when you have a job, you might think it's great that they don't have to go to an office day in and day out, but these folks are also working out 24/7 in between takes. They are doing, you know, they're doing the most basically because they are their product.
Yeah.
With internet popularity, that is a content driven type of business. And I think we've had this conversation before where you have to keep the content fresh in order to basically continue to incentivize people to watch.
To keep your job.
To keep your job, right.
So and for a lot of people, because I've been watching YouTube for I forget if I started sometime around like 2010 when it really became relevant, because there's like a 4-year gap where YouTube was not necessarily a thing from like '06 to 2010. So the earliest creators were on there, and say there was maybe 100 creators and only a couple 100,000 people watching. Right now you have millions of creators and billions of people watching, and every single day, I forgot what the average is, something like something well over a million, probably several 100 million videos get uploaded a day to YouTube.
It's like McDonald's for
Yeah,
sure. Yeah,
exactly. So, and being a YouTuber who's been active for over 6 years now, and don't, by no means do I say I'm famous or important on YouTube, but I have my followers.
Don't minimize.
Oh, I have to minimize because I'm nothing realistically. So like, I've been at it for 6 years. I haven't even hit 10,000 subscribers, but it is what it is. I picked a very niche thing to do. So, but what I was getting at is like, I've been there before, and I've seen other people deal with it, especially in my same situation, my same content creator area in the modeling, specifically the Gunpla community. I see the people who are coming up with me in the same level, so to speak, but they stress and they focus on, okay, what do I got to do? Okay, this number was lower than it was 2 days ago. Okay, so now this person is doing so much better than me. How do I copy them without copying them so that I can get their numbers? So there was one guy I knew who declared another YouTuber his rival, and it was his goal to be bigger than that guy, which by all means there was no way to do because he was significantly bigger. But he basically, it was one of those situations of like, you're my biggest, like they do it in anime quite a lot, you're my biggest rival, and the guys are like, I don't even know who you are, because they set themselves as a target to beat, even though they have no clue that someone else is seeing them in a rival manner. So I watched that particular person crumble a bit when his numbers didn't go right, and then I saw him like start to struggle in, okay, I'm going to try this and see if it works, see where the numbers go, and then okay, that didn't work, I'm going to do this, and literally almost like week to week, day to day, altering his content to figure out. And don't get me wrong, there's something in there to figure out the formula, but the problem is when you're doing that as a content creator and you have a set group of people who watch you, they start looking at it like, why are you changing your content constantly? It's like, this is weird. It's like, just kind of do the thing we want you to do. You don't have to do this to get us to watch. But the problem is so many people are not looking for the people who've been here for years. They're looking for the next run of people. They're looking to get that number up because that.
Well, I know that's.
Go ahead.
That's why like Bobby separates his stuff.
Mm-hmm.
He knows that most people are there for the Transformers, so Transformers goes on his main stuff. He also does. Most people don't know he does Marvel Legends. He does SHF. He does
Star Wars,
Hot Toys. He does Star Wars. Like he does a ton of stuff.
It's
just he
10 times as much content on his Patreon.
Dude, he put out four fucking videos today.
Yesterday.
Or 3 videos today and 3 videos yesterday. I mean, so 6 videos, but nobody will ever see them if you're not on Patreon.
Yeah, just these several hundred people he has on Patreon will see that.
Yeah, but he keeps them separated because he knows that the main drive, the main reason why people look up Bobby Skullface is because they heard about him from a Transformer group. Those are the ones that are going to sell. So instead of changing what he's doing, he just gives the people what they want, and he offers everything else. And if you want it, you're going to come find it.
Yeah. So that is the problem between Hollywood and the digital age, because the digital age is algorithmically driven, and it can be that you have done nothing different and that you've done nothing changed from what made you quote unquote famous, and you will suddenly be thrown out of the algorithm and you will no longer see the same growth that you did. And a lot of people, and I guarantee you Gabby is on that level, cannot deal with that and therefore struggle to stay relevant. One, say there's a lot of YouTubers who switched to Twitch because Twitch started becoming a bigger deal. And mind you, with different rules and stuff like that, obviously allows them to create different content. A lot of people multi-stream, so they're sending it to multiple places. But I've seen a lot of people, including a person that we've talked about on this podcast before, who have left YouTube entirely to go over to TikTok because that's where all of the kids are going, so to speak. So they're finding a different relevance in TikTok, either because they're doing short form content or because for whatever reason, that's where they know they'll get the views. And then and TikTok is obviously notorious for just constantly changing its algorithm for whatever is currently relevant up to the minute, which is fairly well insane, if I'm honest with you.
But the sea is wide and the sea is deep, definitely for what we consider content. And not to be soapbox about it, but quite frankly, the 15 minutes of fame is 15 minutes.
It's not even 15 minutes anymore.
It's not even 15 minutes anymore. It's 5. It's we're 30 seconds of TikTok. I mean, it's great and all to have that notoriety, to have that platform.
Yes.
To show yourself, but have a backup plan, kids.
Oh, okay. So
don't let that be what defines you, because when it does go away, because it will go away.
It always goes away.
Exactly.
It always goes away. You will be left devastated by it.
And that's exactly right.
Yes.
I'm gonna quote one show that Dormammu put me onto. It's called Only Murders in the Building, and there's this elderly lady.
Need to watch it.
She's getting ready to retire from her job, and somebody asks her, like, what's your nugget of wisdom type thing, and her answer was, always love more than one thing, because if you only love one thing and it goes away, you have nothing.
Yes,
exactly.
And that's 100%. The thing is, you can't 100% lock yourself into one singular thing, because when it goes away, because it will, it will go away, then you're left with nothing but the voices in your head telling you that you're a failure, and you end up back in the situation that started this whole conversation.
Yes. And I 100% have been through this, which is why my channel has changed over the years. And some people have complained recently about the lack of Gundam content. Is like, well, it's because I love so much more than that. That's also why I have 4 fucking different channels to separate out that content. So the reaction channel, the podcast channel, like right here, while there's a lot of relevance in what we do in here to nerd culture, obviously, it doesn't fit into what people came to my channel for. So like the main Shoky Reviews channel for the last couple of years has been very much circling around transforming robots, not necessarily around Gundam. But prior to that, Gundam was the 90%. That's the main draw. And some people have complained, and yes, I will be doing more Gundam related content coming up, because 1, I need to get through my backlog. 2, it's more that, and one way or another is a thing that does help with mental health, building stuff. And for a lot of people does help that. Being creative does help that.
Keeping your brain active.
That too. But there's something I wanted to bring up here. It's something I typed to Bobby yesterday when I was having this conversation with him. Let me see here. Where do I start this sentence?
And I'm going to preface this with something that a lot of people don't know is Bobby's actually a very deep thinker.
Oh, very.
And Bobby has very deep thoughts on stuff. And most people mix up his review personality with Bobby. And that is not the same thing. No. I have had some very deep conversations with Bobby. I'm sure you're about to touch on a very deep conversation with Bobby.
Well,
when you listen to this, don't confuse the two.
Well,
know that we're talking about a friend named Bobby. You know what I mean? But it's a friend Bobby, not Bobby the reviewer that everybody's used to.
Yeah. Well, this is just a quote from me that it's something I said to him, because I was talking about this conversation that we're having right now, because he was talking about hold on, I got to scroll past the funny ass meme I made yesterday, what the conversation they had about not feeling good enough. I texted him about that, and then I said that plays into this conversation we're having right now about content creators, where they don't, they might be riding high for a while, and then, like I said, to try to keep up, because it gets built into that I don't feel good enough, I have to, or about myself, so I have to do something to get that going and staying relevant to that. So here's what I actually said. I won't read the whole thing because I just want to read the specific quote. Actually, I will just go ahead and read the whole quote because it makes sense contextually. So it said, "We're already going to do a pod on the mental health and effects of fame and social media on celebrities, but with an addendum of content creators cracking under the pressure of needing to keep up, stay relevant, and feed your soul to the algorithm to feel validation from the empty crowd. So that's the biggest part of it. You know, we spend a lot of time, and I'm saying content creators in general, throwing stuff out there to anyone who will watch or listen. Whether that's because it's actually reaching them on a deep level, whether they bond with the thing, whether it's relevant to them at all, or it's just to the like 80% of people who are just consuming it on an empty level. Like it's just there, it doesn't mean anything, they're just endlessly just being consumers. So when I say the empty crowd, it's like we see the millions of available people out there that will potentially listen to it, but most of it means nothing versus like Bobby, for instance, putting out the Transformers content to the very specific crowd. Everything else that he loves, he stopped putting out there because it's basically, here's the, I don't know, 30 some odd thousand people he has subscribed, and then the God knows how many hundreds of thousands that could subscribe that don't give a shit about that other comment or that other content, you know. So that's an empty crowd to him. So he pulled that back and then focused it on people who would definitely care, and then puts out the other stuff to a very specific crowd. But so many people are just shouting into the darkness and hoping for the best, you know. And they make,
well, I mean, that's again social media as a whole, though,
exactly. That's my point. Is like, because YouTube is social media. It's like, don't ever break that down. While it might be an entertainment platform, it is 100% social media, because we have the direct feedback, we have the likes, we have the dislikes. Well, we used to have dislikes. We have the content, the content algorithm based service. We get fed things based on the things we looked at, or the things that certain people deem us worthy to be seen, which is the other part of it. So the relevance thing, okay, how do I put the exact right hashtag so this will be seen by the right amount of people? How do I manipulate the thumbnail or the title to catch everyone's eye, which I guess is how the Anne Heche video got so many views. You know, that feeds into it. And so many people spend thousands of hours studying this to figure out the math of how to stay relevant in this digital age.
Well, I think I also said this was on a chat between where we were discussing something, and I said this is a couple days ago, where I was like, people are trying to force an emotion.
Yes.
But it's just to distract them from how their lives are.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and you were like, well, you just spell out social media as a whole, which is the truth. It's, you are attempting to throw things out into space and hoping that you land a comet.
It's fishing.
It's fishing. It's fishing for the purposes of
to quote the Bible, we're fishers of men, but not in a religious context. In this case, it's a validation complex. Like, it's like, I need to be validated. I need as many people as possible to validate my feelings. And if I can instill that feeling in you by what I'm doing, then that's the thing, you know? Kind of like you said. Well, I mean, that's your connection. That's what I'm saying. Is like, I mean, I make you feel that to pull it in.
Content as a whole, especially anybody, and I'm sure you would agree, is that when you start creating content, you're doing it for the fun because you enjoy doing it.
Yes.
It's when it becomes something more, something where you're looking upon it, and not to say you, but just individuals.
You can
like
lump me in.
Giving. Well, no, I mean, it's just the royal you, where you know, it becomes something more where you are seeking that validation because you're seeing your numbers go down, and you're wondering, well, am I doing something wrong?
What do I do to fix this? And am I the problem?
Yes, right, exactly.
Yes, and I think, and I'll tell you right now. So on the reaction side, there are, and I follow a handful of reactors because I really like what they do, but I stopped following. And you mentioned earlier the reacting to other reactors, and this is kind of how this came up, because I've had this conversation with Christine the other day, and I'm not gonna throw the people under the bus she mentioned, but she said there are reactors that she somewhat follows, or at least checks out their stuff, that clearly are only doing it to feed the algorithm. They're only looking at specific things because it's the hot thing. It's what's going to drive views to their channel, but it makes their reactions empty because all they're doing is just trying to feed into it. And people feel that the lack of what's the word I'm looking for? Not genuine. What's the other word I'm looking for? Genuine, real. Why is the word escaping me? Authentic. There you go. Authenticity. And I think, and that's something, not to toot my own horn, but that's something a lot of people have said, especially when it comes to my reviews, because I've seen reviewers do it too, where they just buy the thing that's hot and they try to put it out there so they'll get views. You know, they're like, okay, this toy line is getting all the views right now because it's brand new, and because people on this end of it, behind the camera as it is, also have FOMO in the same way that people just buying the product also have, like, ooh, I need to get that. But on our end, it's like, ooh, I need to get that so that people will watch my channel. And I'm guilty of that too. There was a time where I was doing the same thing, and then I realized, why am I doing this? It's like, I might actually like these things, but I'm only reviewing them because I know they'll get me views.
Well, I know I had a friend who was a reviewer, local to me, and he was big in the have to get it first, have to get it out there to get those numbers and those views. And so when all the COVID stuff happened and it was messing up shipments and people weren't finding stuff and it was all going to one area and not another. He wasn't able to get his hands on stuff. A couple times he paid the high price to get it sent from somewhere else to get it faster.
100%.
And in between, he was doing regular, just, I found this at Walmart today. I found this at Target today. I found this at Walgreens today. He was doing regular videos too. And he was literally comparing the numbers. Like, you know, I got this. I checked, I typed, I looked in YouTube, and I'm the third video up with it, and I have X 100,000 views. But then I got this yesterday, and I have 30 views. And it started beating him up. Like, he's like, so they don't like my reviews. They only like what I'm showing, so therefore they don't like me.
I had this conversation repeatedly with a reviewing friend of mine who actually lives up there in Maryland, and
he ended up
every other week.
My friend ended up giving up. He quit. Like, his channel's still live, and I think once every few months he just throws some random shit in there, but he just kind of gave up on it all. It beat him down. And I guess you're a creator. See, I don't have the behind the scenes stuff, but he's shown me stuff and talked to me about stuff. And one of the things that the people can do on there is they can not only see how many views, they can see how far into the video the views are going. They can see whether they watched the whole thing. They can see whether they're skipping ads. They can see which part has been watched over and over.
Well, actually, YouTube shows you that now.
Crazy.
Like,
that's what I'm saying.
On your end. No, if you pay attention. So, go pick any video you would normally watch on YouTube and pause it. You will see the gray area that now comes up on the timeline, and it shows you where people are watching it. And there's a particular hub that also does this. And I think YouTube borrowed it from them because YouTube used to not have this, the high traffic area. So YouTube not only shows it to the creator, they show it.
Heat map.
Yes, exactly. It shows the heat map, but now, the fun part about YouTube analytics that doesn't necessarily beat you down is it will show you when people are watching your content the most, so that you can actually change your release schedule to when people are actually watching it. That's why a lot of my SHOKY review stuff gets released at either 7 a.m. or 7 p.m. because it seems to be when most people are watching. Now, you can tailor your thing, like this is a brand new channel here, so that's why the release time is generally 6 a.m. But if I go into the analytics and it says that most people are watching it around noon, maybe I'll change the release to around noon, something like that. So I probably do need to do that to maximize our views.
The heat map was actually always there. It just it's just become more prevalent because creators were asking for it.
Well, I'm saying, like, you're right on that, but I'm saying, like, on the consumer side, it's there. Right. It wasn't always there.
It was always there. Yeah, it wasn't always visible.
Yeah, now it is.
The curtain was there.
I think I noticed it. I think I noticed it like 2 weeks ago. I was going through a video. I was like, wait a minute, because I saw the hump. I was like, huh. Okay. And that's one reason why people do a lot of timestamps now, or chapters as they call it. They renamed it to chapters, which would be a good thing to do on these videos, actually, to have fucking chapters so people can skip around the podcast, even though I'd prefer them to listen to the whole thing. But no, you're right, Ricky. And I've seen so many quote unquote young creators fall into that. People that have come up after me that I've befriended. And mind you, once again, I'm not big, but I've got some numbers and I've been doing this a while. I just don't play the algorithm game anymore. I don't play the keeping up with the Joneses game anymore. I also don't do the keeping up appearances game. So it's like, I tried to do that with Gundam stuff, but being here in the US, there was no way to get things in a relevant time unless you're paying overnight prices from Japan or Korea to get releases the second they dropped. So I realized, I don't know, 4 years ago, maybe even longer than that, when I could put up a video, say, just for instance, a brand new IBO release, right? You know, call it the new Barbatos kit, something. I could put that up and it would get a decent amount of views in the first few days, or at least the first week, but it would be thousands of less views than the previous people who got it day one in Japan. Or Korea, for instance.
Well, so, I have heard, I don't know exact names, and even if I did, I wouldn't tell anybody because it's not anybody's business.
Yeah.
But there are certain reviewers that will have, for lack of a better term, like a hand model. They'll pick the figure up right then and there, day one when it releases, record themselves going through everything, and digitally send it to the reviewer, and the reviewer will just voice over it.
I could see that.
And they'll have like a generic background so that they can both have it.
This is
and that's pretty fucked up.
I never considered that to be a thing, but that totally makes sense. But it's also, and this is why it's so funny, because I had people criticize me, even other creators in the same environment said, why don't you do voiceovers for your reviews instead of doing them live? And I said, for the same reason, it doesn't feel authentic. It's like, I may have reviewed the thing, but I'm only showing you the particular footage and then telling you about it later. It's like, if I'm already there doing the footage, why wouldn't I just be recording what I'm going through? So I've had a lot.
Why would you comment like that? Because you're not the one they're not the ones creating the content either. Like there's again, this is where the authenticity comes into play. Do you want something that's going to feel more like a merchandise catalog, or do you want something that's going to actually feel more like a down-to-earth review or a down-to-earth looking at it where you can actually make a judgment?
So that's one thing that I always tried to differentiate with my channel is I feel like some people are trying to sell you the thing, whether or not they have a sponsor, because a lot of these people have sponsors.
There's one that we I won't mention their names, but second verse the same as the first will literally have a figure fall apart in their hand and still tell you that it's a good figure.
Well, I know that some people will tell you, they'll say good things about it, and then when bad things happen, they'll at least talk about that particular thing. They'll just be like,
oh, his arm just fell off. But here on the positive side, this paint app is really cool.
So for me in particular, just talking about a couple particular instances. So the Gundam MG F91, or F91 Gundam, I should say. The original, the 2.0. So when the 2.0 model came out, I reviewed my friend's because I had no interest in buying it. Or he got it first and I would have bought it later. So he built it. I reviewed it, right? First of all, people bitch that I didn't build it, therefore I couldn't review it. And I told them all to fuck off because that's not how this works. Because I can still review the thing as it is, but not include thoughts on how the build process goes. Duh. And it in particular had a lot of fucking issues. I mean, it was falling apart on me in the review. And I said that it's like, I don't know if this is a problem because of the way he built it or it's an inherent problem. Turns out it was an inherent problem. Like the stuff falling off is because it was poor planning on their part. And I ended up having to turn comments off on that video because people were going nuts in the fucking comments, to the point that it's one of the only times I've made a rebuttal video, at least on that channel. And I actually went through and I videoed myself fixing the issues. I'm like, here's the problem I had. This is how I'm dealing with it. And mind you, it's not even mine. It's my friend's. But I actively showed this is the problem. This is what happens with it. And now at this point, other people have told me this is a problem, not just me. So here's how you can fix it. And then I address it. Okay, I screwed this part up because I went through the comments and said, hey, look, you did this wrong. So it's basically like Bobby does his housekeeping, whenever he gets something wrong. But I sat there and I showed the whole thing in the video. And I addressed the idea of, look, one, don't tell me how to do my content. Two, this is how this game works from this side of the camera. And there was other times, I lost my train of thought for that, but there was another reference I was going to make. That one in particular was really bad, because the backlash of the concept of it. There was another thought I had, and I forgot what it was. But going back to the whole needing to keep up with stuff. Oh, never mind. I'm sorry. The thought I was going to have, you talked about that particular guy who can't say anything negative. So some people have bitched at me because I say so much negative things. I was like, I'm telling you my negative experience with the thing. It's like, how are you mad about me showing you what went wrong, especially if it falls apart on camera? I've had figures break on me on camera while doing the review. I've had Gundam kits that I built that fell apart during the review. As like, and then when I say something about it, they're like, well, that's not an obvious problem. You just did it wrong. I was like, but why wouldn't I tell you what happened? Why wouldn't I share that experience with you? You know? And this is where it comes down to the people in the comments being shitheads. And I experience this a lot on my reaction channel, especially when it comes to any of my voice play reactions, as Christine, Will, and why am I drawing a blank here?
Jay?
No, not, well, yes, Jay, but no, the other person, for some reason I'm forgetting her name, who also watches the podcast.
The one with the tank top, Laura, was it?
Oh, Laura, yeah. So basically anybody who watches that channel, any of my regulars, know that the voice play fans rip me apart in the reactions because I point out the stuff I don't like about it, and then I talk about why I don't like it. But the thing is, that shit still gets to me. Bobby's talked about negative comments too. Like sometimes he can ignore it and blow it off, and other times it like drills into your brain and you can't let it go. And when it comes to that negativity, it can eat at you to the point that some creators and quote unquote famous people can't handle it. And it's an issue across social media, whether that's Instagram or Facebook or anything else like that, where constant negativity from the fans, whether that's how you look, the way you talk, you did this stupid thing, like people hating on particular actors because they don't like a movie, things like that. What happened to what's her face from Star Wars, the actress in Rose Tico? People hated her, or with Kellyanne Tran. People hated, yeah. So people hated Rose so much
that they Tran, Moises Ingram,
Moises Ingram, yes. They got bullied off of social media because people hated their characters in a fucking movie. So
well, that's what's his Joffrey too.
Yes.
From Game of Thrones.
Jack.
People were like spitting on him in public because of his character, to the point where he doesn't want to act anymore.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I also probably would want to take a good break from acting as that character. But that
and then Anakin.
Yes.
The Jake Lloyd.
Lloyd.
He completely quit everything. And then we're talking about mental health issues and how it leads people. The actor who did Jar Jar Binks. And I am not a fan of Jar Jar Binks in Star Wars, but that's not the actor, that's the character.
And he wasn't even on screen.
He literally tried to kill himself because of how he was treated, because of his character that he played as Jar Jar Binks.
Exactly.
He has a super sad story. Like I watched a video on him talking about it, and it's heartbreaking to think that people can walk up to a total stranger that they think they understand because of a CGI character that they played in a movie, which was just a job that they did not write their parts. They did not write how they were supposed to act it. No, they showed up, they did what they were told to, they went home. And they talked to him and treated him so badly, he almost killed himself. Like he tried multiple times.
Yeah.
And I will say this, and this is one of the few times I will actually curse because it is an actual real thing. Some 20 plus years ago, Penny Arcade, which is an online strip, had developed something called the Greater Internet Fuckwad Theory.
Yes.
And that theory is that internet plus anonymity equals asshole.
Yes. 100%. Keyboard warriors.
Keyboard warriors. It is a concept that is tried and true still to this day, where and again, this is where I kind of soapbox a little bit, where your anonymity should never equate to your personality. So if you're listening out there, we love you, but please treat your persona as you would in real life, because it will catch up to you. I have known too many people that have two different personas between online and in reality. If you're not kind to others in a virtual space, imagine how you are in reality.
Mm-hmm.
you know, and maybe rethink where your priorities should be about that. Because treating others, and it doesn't matter if they're popular, it doesn't matter if you think they have a thick skin, just treat people nicely.
Don't be an
There's
asshole.
no should don't be an
That's
asshole.
it.
There should
Refer
be
to previous
no
refer
conversations.
to
reason.
Don't be an
previous.
asshole.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So this is one thing I want to bring up because it, even though we didn't talk about it in this episode, with She-Hulk and the Lord of the Rings that have now dropped, and I believe, well, maybe not so much House of the Dragon, there is so much backlash on these internet anonymous assholes that actors, directors, and everything else like that involved in the movie are now turning into assholes themselves online in retaliation. I'll say, okay, you don't like a TV show, so you get to go be a dickhead on the internet to the point that you think you're going to have some greater effect. Like, if I'm an asshole big enough about this, they're going to take it down. And actually, some people have fallen into that realistically. Or technically, there's the positive side of that, and that's how we get the Snyder Cut. But that wasn't assholes. That was different. But the outrage towards actors, directors, or even studios because a thing was made that you don't like, or you don't like how this particular character was played, or you think that whatever, who cares? This is what I said last week on our episode. I am fucking done with these dumbass internet arguments about good or bad. It's like, it goes back to the, if you like it, you win. But the problem is that we're now changing to, if you hate it, you win. And that's where so many people, actors, actresses, whatever, are probably breaking down because of this now it's cool to hate things mentality.
Right.
And
that's why, and this was an article that we also read in regards to Tom Holland giving up social media.
Segue.
Where he's basically, it's hard for anybody, regardless of whether or not they're popular or not, to not go online and want to see what other people think at times.
You remember back in the day, there was that game where you Googled yourself to see what would pop up?
Yeah.
Right.
Like, that was pre all this social media stuff. I remember people used to do that shit.
People and anonymous people can be vicious. And, again, if you're not treating somebody, even if they're famous or not, like they're not human, it's not fair to them. And so Tom Holland, he basically said nope. And he basically cut off his, he stepped away. He's saying, I'm stepping away from Instagram. I'm stepping
Twitter.
away from Twitter.
Twitter is the worst thing we've ever
Twitter's
created.
A garbage can. No
Twitter,
offense to anybody that loves Twitter, but it's a garbage can.
Offend them. I don't care. Twitter, I technically quit Twitter because I don't use my account. I signed out of my
Never
account.
had a Twitter. Thank you very much.
But I've one reason I left Twitter was when they started canceling people, like when cancel culture really ramped up, so that even if you just threw out a differing opinion, such as one that potentially cost me a lot of friends in the last couple of years, mind you, not being evil about anything, not being an asshole about anything, just having a difference of opinion. And I recognized very quickly that if I were to express this opinion on Twitter, or technically a lack of opinion, because I didn't actually express my opinion, I just expressed there could be a difference of opinion, that alone could have the Twitter mob coming after me for something I actually technically didn't say. And with current culture being what it is, where not only do Twitter mobs exist, but now Twitter itself taking an active role in removing people and doing all these other crazy things to people, I could easily see, like that's just how it affected me. I wanted to avoid public scrutiny from God knows how many strangers, so I just flat out didn't do a thing that could have helped my online career. So like,
I tried Twitter, but then I realized, what's the point if one of X million number of people, where again, you're just screaming into ether. It's photons, people. There's no substance behind it. And to be honest, granted, there is history, and that's pretty obvious. There's no that the substance behind it is literally of people screaming into a vacuum, and sometimes not screaming the best things either. Because look at how many people wind up saying things and then it comes back to haunt them years later. I mean, we've seen this enough with a lot of directors, and we've seen this enough with people of fame or anybody that has any type of legitimate public appearance. These things come back to bite you. Never forget that the internet in this day and age, the internet does not forget. It may have in the past, it may have
Yeah.
20 years ago.
The internet is forever.
The internet is forever now.
You say things.
This is something
You
that
can
is
say something.
permanent.
You can say something terrible. Say Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Someone will screen cap it, even though you realize what you did in less than 2 minutes, and delete it. It's out there forever now for public scrutiny. And I wanted to add in something there. I think Twitter is like anal because most people are intrigued by it because it sounds like a good idea.
But very few people can handle it.
Very few people can actually handle it. Usually it involves, someone fucking someone else over, but in the end, you just end up with a whole lot of shit. So,
Butthurt.
and you end up butthurt. Thank you for completing the thought. Thank you. So it's a terrible but hilarious analogy. But it is a thing. A lot of people get broken because of Twitter, because of the mobs, because of criticism. And one thing we didn't really get into with the young females, for instance, a lot of the criticism they're facing isn't about their acting choices. It's about their looks. It's like, oh, well, I don't like your haircut in this. Oh, that dress is fucking stupid. Oh, you're a little too heavy. I forget which person. Let me double check. I think I left it up here. Who is it? Oh, Holly Madison, which I guess is a Playboy person. Basically, she suffered from body dysmorphia because of criticism online, and she couldn't see herself. Like she said, okay, maybe my thighs are too big or whatever, and I need to lose 5 pounds, even though she's insanely hot. Because of this concept of I need to look beautiful for these posts, or I have to look a certain way, I'm now going to purposely affect my own health and my own body to do that. And this is a huge thing that Instagram actually did. And Facebook also, it plays a part of this, and this is some of the sickness that comes from social media. Facebook actually conducted psychological trials on people, technically against the law, because it goes against the Nuremberg Code in a lot of ways, not to get on a soapbox. But Facebook actually conducted psychological tests on people. They purposely chose however many people and force-fed them negative posts to see their reaction. That's fucked up. And they didn't tell you they were doing this. It only came out afterwards due to whistleblowers.
Actually, quick dad moment on that.
Dad moment.
Go, if you, regardless of whether or not you have kids or not, go watch Brainchild.
Yes.
There's a specific episode on social media that if you should have your kids, if you have kids, have them watch it. It is very, very good and very well done.
What is that? What is that documentary about Facebook? The
Social Network.
Not that one. Not the movie.
Not the movie. The other one.
It's on Netflix. Not Distortion.
Social...
There's Social Distortion's a band. But it's something like that. And
about.
They talk about the manipulation. They talk about, force feeding, like I said, the force feeding of negative posts to see what will break people. And Instagram does the same thing, where they only will they'll show the like counts of really, really, really beautiful women, so to speak. And then you get forced into thinking you have to look this way. You have to follow this particular trend. And actors and actresses are definitely not going to avoid that because they live publicly. So you'll see a lot of that. Forget the effect of normal people. Expand that out to normal people who've now been elevated to famous status.
Right.
And that all of that feeds this horrible cycle of depression, anxiety, especially when it comes to wanting to live up to not only a visual standard, but a social interaction standard online. I need more likes. I need more shares. I need all these other things. What do I got to do to build that up? Oh no, this negative story came out about me. How do I fight that when it could be complete horseshit that someone made up, not an actual story? And then now you've got this barrel of anxiety that someone dunked you into. And like, what do you do? Especially as a young actor or actress. some of these things just lead into actual mental problems they didn't have in the first place, you know. So basically social media sucks and Hollywood is evil. Let's excluding the predatory behavior of specific directors and studio heads.
It's harder to be kind than it is to hurt, folks. We know this. Be kind.
That's why Ricky's such an asshole.
I mean, I guess so.
but we like Ricky.
Ricky's curmudgeonly.
Sometimes.
No, I'm reactionary.
Yeah,
if I'm an asshole towards you, you probably earned it.
Yeah, Ricky's reactionary. Ricky's not a curmudgeon. I'm more of a curmudgeon. It just doesn't come out here. I'm definitely the get off my lawn type. But I'm
the one who waits till you get on your lawn and then throws shit at you. See, so I'm reactionary.
Ricky, you're the kind to grow pot in your neighbor's yard so they get arrested.
I'm the kind to grow pot in my neighbor's yard to try to get the hippies to come over there and fucking take pot shots at them with my fucking BB rifle.
Actual pot shots?
Yep.
There you go.
I'm glad you picked up what I was throwing down there.
Yep. So either way, guys, I think that's a good place to leave off. Do you have that hotline number and stuff again, Rob, for people?
Yeah. So again, if you or somebody that you know, or whether it's a friend or just anybody having trouble, and they just need somebody to talk to, the two numbers, the first is for NAMI, which is the National Alliance on Mental Illness. That is 1-800-950-6264. It's a Monday through Friday hotline, but if you or anybody that you know is having a problem or is in crisis, needs help, needs support 24/7, 365 in the United States, that is 988. So there are people to talk to. Remember that there is help. There is that it is possible to ensure that somebody you love can get the help that they need. And of course, you know, it's all about understanding and about understanding yourself and about understanding others, and that not everybody on the surface is going to show those things. Talk is the best thing you can do. So 988 is the number to contact. It's the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. But, you know, really, if you need points of contact, if you need to, there's plenty of resources all out there. Shoki has mentioned them, whether it's Talkspace, or there are several out there where you can find a therapist, and most of the time, a lot of the time, there are resources that you can find that are free.
Yes. One thing I wanted to shout out, I missed with the Tom Holland story. He does help sponsor an organization or charity that helps teenagers with mental health issues. It's called STEM4. So, you know, for younger people who may have, because young people and old people, while we may have similar problems, we don't suffer the same things realistically. You know,
is an international. That's actually an international group too. So
good.
They have resources on their site that help for those that are overseas.
Also, I hope that last little thing we just said went through, because there was a weird hiccup. It looked like the audio was still coming through, but everything froze for a second. Okay. So usually when that happens, it is fine, but just it looked bad on my part. So, and of course, we'll do the shout outs before we go here. I am Shoki. You can follow me on all the Shoki related things. Please help feed my ego so that I can keep the algorithm going. And then do the same thing for Ricky and Nerd Rage. Just fucking around.
Not my ego.
No, I'm just kidding. So yeah, you can follow Ricky at all the things from Nerd Rage he does on Facebook, and of course on the Realm Hatton Project on Friday nights on the Realm of Collectors channel. And we need to shout out Mike. Hopefully he'll be coming back on sometime soon. We haven't technically heard much from him. He's thrown a comment or two out there. He has been putting out content on the Comic Relief Crusader channel, so I'm not sure what's going on with him. So we need to figure that out. So we need to figure out when Mike's going to come back out. So you can check that out on the Comic Relief Crusader channel. And of course, if you want to help him out, you can buy stuff from his, sorry, throat's giving out on me. You can buy stuff from his store on Freelance Graphics with a K. And there's Rob. Rob's just here.
So yeah, you can usually find me. I'm sometimes talking here, sometimes making funny puns on some of the Realm of Collectors shows, but also I've been kind of getting onto the right out of the box, which sometimes happens now and then on the Realm of Collectors show channel on YouTube. Definitely, my name is Dormammu, out there in the ether sphere in most places. Other Rob G on the Facebooks. And again, thank you to everybody for listening. We appreciate y'all.
No, we don't.
Okay.
I couldn't care less. I'm just here to talk to you guys.
Yeah, that's it. Ricky doesn't care. That's why Jay
Appreciate
quit.
these two guys.
That's why Jay quit us because of Ricky's opinions on his thoughts.
My opinions about his
Jay.
opinions hurt his opinions. I don't know.
Come back, Jay.
Care.
It's okay if you write to us. We're not going to be mad if you do. Just understand.
Just know that if you make an opinion, I'll have an opinion too.
Yes.
And we'll both just have to be adults about it.
And if you guys want to actually voice your opinions to us or thoughts or give us ideas for things, you can do so at NowYouMadeItAwkwardMail@gmail.com. Actually, I had an idea for a top 5 list we should do sometime soon. Also, another past, present, future idea that we had not long ago we should probably also do because it would be fun.
I want Miss Christine to write us in again. I liked her email. It was very concise. It was broken down properly. It was easy to get through. I like her writing.
I don't know. Christine really focuses on food. So if we do another food episode, she'll probably be on board. And there was one other thing I wanted to say, and I forgot what it was. Oh, comments. Comments, please. Comment down below if you have thoughts and stuff like that. Emails are great, but unfortunately, they don't feed the algorithm. So actually having interactions with you guys in the comments, whether you're Will or Jay or Christine, by all means, you can do that.
Will needs to write back too. I haven't heard from Will in forever, man. I haven't been told I was writing a long time.
Will's been busy. He's in a live stream, but he's been busy. Actually, happy belated birthday to Will. It was his birthday, not yesterday, or no, I'm sorry, not this past Friday, but the one before. We kind of missed it, but it was his birthday.
Happy birthday, dude. I miss you, man. Come back and tell me I'm right, because Dormammu says it every once in a while, but he whispers it, so rarely gets picked up on these things. So
yes, but
I need somebody to come on here and tell me I'm right about.
Yeah, but we do have a whole Shoki was right section now.
Yeah, it has 2 comments, and they're both from Dormammu. So
exactly. So actually, I'm gonna make a whole voiceover thing just for the Shoki is right segment. Boop. We're like, what is Shoki about?
he's gonna read both of them.
Exactly, all 2 of them over and over again. So with that, guys, bye.
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 That's actually Rob's only second proper bye.
I was gonna say he actually got to say it at the end of the show.
Made it, folks. Do I get my 9?
Yeah, we better get 9.5 for this one.
I see her rolling up, Uber black Cadillac, high heel boots and a sexy body full of tats.